Thank you very much. I think the last panel was truly exceptional, and I'm glad that each of you had a chance to stretch your legs and to do some networking during the break. But to close our conference, we've invited Geoffrey Garrett, Dean of the USC Marshall School of Business, to deliver our keynote about what it means to be a leader in today's world. After his remarks, Yasmin Davidds, the founder and CEO of the Dr. Yasmin Davidds Leadership Institute, will chat with Dean Garrett and lead a Q&A. Geoffrey Garrett is Dean of the USC Marshall School of Business, the holder of the Robert R. Dockson Dean's Chair in Business Administration, and a professor of management and organization. Under his leadership, Marshall has launched a new interdisciplinary joint undergraduate degrees with other USC schools, STEM certified all undergraduate programs, and grown Marshall's graduate business, analytics, and finance programs. Please give that a round of applause. Further, Yasmin Davidds is the founder and CEO of Dr. Yasmin Davidds Leadership Institute, which prepares innovative women professionals to emerge, succeed, and to support each other globally. A USC Marshall alumna, Yasmin serves on the USC Latino Alumni Association Board of Directors. Please welcome Dean Garrett and Yasmin Davidds.
Hi, everybody. It's wonderful to be here with you this afternoon, and I'm so impressed that there was so much energy in the room on a Friday afternoon before a football game in the middle of a heat wave. This is genuinely impressive work, and as I've apologized to a few of these sartorially resplendent gentlemen in ties, when I left my office, which is not very far away from here, and I was confronting the idea of walking 100 yards in a tie, I thought better of it, but I now see that I was in the minority, and the bow ties too. I mean, this is as good as it gets. So it's fantastic to be here, and I just learned that this is the last event of your conference today, and you never want to be between the audience and the cocktail hour. But I guess, you know, we'll see if we can, Yasmin and I will see if we can make it reasonably interesting for you. I was thinking very broadly about the topics like leadership and impact as you have today for the conference. And I said to the organizer of this event and to Yasmin that what I thought I would do is just tell you what I told our incoming MBA class this month, last month, beginning of August, about why I am revved up to be Dean of the Marshall School and why I think what we're doing is very important. So since I'm a believer in public speaking, I know the important rule of three. So there are some poor people in the room who had to listen to me speak just last night. I'm sure I said that then too. I apologize. I'll keep it to myself. There are three things that I want to say to you. The first one is that, you know, in a lot of ways, I'm a very weird business school dean because I spent most of my academic career being a political scientist, not a business school person. And what that meant for me is that I'm a sort of outside-in person. I think macro first and micro second. And the macro thing that I see in the world today, which is why I got engaged in business schools, was it just seems to me that the role of the private sector and the role of private sector innovation is more important than it's ever been before. And to state that glibly, I think we're living in a world in which business must move from being part of the problem to creating social challenges, to being an important part of the solution. And, you know, of course I would say that because I'm a business school dean, but I really believe it's true, and I'll give you one example that I think about a lot because, you know, we're all very concerned about sustainability on lots of dimensions. You know, I think if you ask President Folt what's her #1 priority, sustainability would be it. And when I think about sustainability, you know, I'm obsessed these days with electric vehicles and batteries and all that stuff because I think most of the opportunities and challenges in our world you can see through the lens of moving away from internal combustion engines to electric vehicles. Okay, So that's a wind-up. What's the pitch? The pitch is that if you think about adoption of electric vehicles, for example, it's absolutely true that government regulation has played an important role in California, nationally, the investments that the Chinese government made in EVs 15 years ago. That's all true. But if we're going to get to a world in which we transition away from internal combustion engines to zero energy vehicles, private sector innovation is going to be the reason we get there. So let me try to be realistic about that too. I don't think anyone could have ever anticipated a world in which an ambitious individual entrepreneur, Elon Musk, could take on and defeat Ford and GM in electric vehicles. And he didn't do that through government support. He did that by being an incredibly impressive entrepreneur. And I'm not passing any judgment on Elon as a human being. I'm just looking at what happened with Tesla. But having said that, as having been a Tesla owner, I know that that technology is now really old, right? And I'm actually worried that the US won't make it to electric vehicles because American consumers are deciding that the electric vehicles aren't good enough. You know, I have range anxiety with my electric vehicle. I worry about the charging network, right? That stuff all really matters. So if we're going to get to fully electrified, I don't think it's going to be through the incentives that are in the Inflation Reduction Act. I think it'll be through another technological innovation, either something like green hydrogen or what the Japanese are doing called solid-state batteries, which would do away with our range anxiety. So the reason I tell that story is that when I look at sustainability, or when if we polled a whole bunch of students just walking outside on sustainability challenges, they'd say, God, business is the problem. You know, too much emissions coming out of the private sector. We've got to tax them, we've got to regulate them. There's an element of truth to that. But I think when you look on the solution side, what you see is an increasing public role of the private sector, and sustainability is as good an example as any. I'll give you a bonus one for 30 seconds to a minute. You know, I don't know where everyone stands on the wonderful world of GLP drugs, GLP-1 drugs, you know, Ozempic, all that stuff. But if you think about, I'm not thinking about the US now, I'm thinking globally about the emerging obesity challenges in most emerging markets. As they get richer, people consume more food, right? So you have emerging obesity epidemic, for example, in China, that then is associated with a lot of other stuff, diabetes, cancer, etc. Okay, so obesity is not just a Western problem, it's potentially a global problem. We've been thinking for 30 years, 40 years about what to do about obesity, and then along come these drugs that seem quite magical, right, in terms of what they do. Well, no one told Eli Lilly or Novo Nordisk, the Danish company, to invent GLP. Right? They did it themselves, and that could have massive societal impact. So point one of my three is that I really like being in a business school because I think we're living in a world in which business is and must be part of the solution, not part of the problem. Okay, point two. What's that mean for our students? For me, it means two things in equal measure. On the one hand, technological change is driving everything in the world, and what we must do, should do, is empower all of our students to take full advantage of the opportunities that technological change creates for them. And I would, in a very simple way, I'd call this tech fluency. We need our students to be fluent in the language of AI, for example. They're going to benefit from that. But at exactly the same time as tech is creating opportunities, I think it's also creating responsibilities for everybody in society. So just to extend the AI example, of course we want our students, I think, to be super users of AI. But I think we also require of them, if they're going to be leaders, to understand that maybe AI is scary for a lot of people. is going to disrupt employment patterns, is going to have people worry about what it means to be human. Those things are all real. So if we live in a world where technological change is creating both opportunity and responsibility, what does that mean we should do in our education? We should give our students all the skills to take full advantage of the opportunity, but keep reminding them of their social responsibility that comes with being leaders in a tech-enabled world. So that'd be my second point, that yes, business is really important, but business can't be narrowly focused. We've all got to be concerned about the externalities from economic change and technological change. Third point, if you're aware of all that stuff, how do you make change? And the cliched answer, which I think is true, is leadership. But I think what leadership means today is so different from before. Now, I don't know when before was. Is it 10 years ago, 20 years ago? I don't know how long ago, but let's do a contrast in what leadership looks like. You know, the old model of leadership for me, I'm going to be a little alliterative, I'm going to call hero leadership. We thought that leaders were people who looked good, sounded good, and could say to followers, trust me, I know the way, just follow me and we'll get there. Today we can't do that, right? Instead of hero leaders, I think we need human leaders. And what's a human leader? A human leader is somebody who understands that everybody who works for you is looking for meaning and purpose in their lives. They're not going to do things because you tell them to do it. They're going to do things because they want to do it, and they're only going to follow you if they believe in you. That's a profound change in what leadership means. And I think we have the opportunity at USC to redefine leadership in that way. And just think about the buzzwords that are more than buzzwords to me that really, really matter, right? I think we need to have leaders who are transparent and accountable. We need people who understand, who can be empathic and compassionate at the same time. We need people who understand that they must be self-aware and self-reflective. That is so different from this old-style leadership model. So to the narrative arc of my 3 points, and I'm now at my 10 minutes, so I'll stop speaking. Part one, don't beat up on business as being part of the problem. Business has got to be part of the solution. Successful businesses are going to have to think not only about the opportunities, but also the responsibilities they have. And if you want to deliver change, you're going to have to be a human leader. You can't just be a hero leader. So that's my 10 minutes. I'm going to stop speaking now. Yasmin.
This on? I have like 101 questions here, and I can't decide which one to start with because you said so many great points. But I think I want to start with the one where you just made a comment about self-awareness and how important it is to lead with humanity. And so my first question for you is, what can leaders do to deepen their self-awareness so that they lead more consciously and effectively in a world where purpose and meaning are central?
So, no surprise, a very big and a very difficult question. But I can tell you that just for myself, I had to undergo a personal transformation in which I went from being a sort of more selfish and self-directed into being much more concerned about other people. And what I learned in that process was, and this is kind of a Zen Buddhist move, right? You need to, the way I think about self-awareness is to be in the fray, to be having a conversation, but also to be sort of over here and looking down and judging how I'm doing in my interactions with other people. So for me, that the skill of self-awareness is a really, really valuable one, really owning up to how you are with other people. And then you've got to reflect on that. And when you reflect on it, you've got to be willing to change your own behavior in ways that really matter. And, I'll give you the example for me that I struggle with every day, right? I tend to be a very bang, quick, passionate, responsive person. And I know that there's a plus to that, which is it can be engaging. But I also know I can talk over people all the time, and not because I'm being rude, but because I'm so excited I want to jump in, right? So for me, I know that I've got to try to take a pause. Every time I want to say something, I have to say, no, hold back, wait another 5 seconds, 10 seconds, it's going to be more effective for you to do that. And that's as I said, I struggle with that on a daily basis because I think my natural predilection is to be excitedly engaged, and I know it has this negative consequence. I talk over people. So for me, that's both a lifelong journey and something I have to think about on a daily basis, but an essential part of being a more effective leader.
So the fact that you have become so self-aware and went through a personal transformation to become to the other side, to be able to see.
And don't use in the past tense. I just interrupted you. Right? It's not the past tense.
Oh, currently, Riz. What caused you to step into this space? Because many leaders maybe know that that's a space that new generations are requesting and even need to become better leaders and become best at their work. You are currently stepping into that space and will continuously do it. What caused that shift for you to understand that is a need today?
So again, this is personal biography, sort of some amateur psychology, really. The big transition for me was when I went from being a teaching and research professor, which is sort of, in one way, it's a pretty selfish endeavor to do that, right? It's about you. But you also think that the greatest contribution you can make is to be your best self, right? If I could write a better journal article, I was making a higher contribution to the university. When I became an administrator, and I hate the term administrator, I really think we should talk about leaders in university environments and others, not administrator is this kind of dismissive term that a lot of people use. It's only what people who aren't good enough to do the other stuff would do. When I became a leader in a university context, I just immediately understood that not only was it not about me, but that organizational performance and how other people would behave, perform, would improve if I could stand back, not jump in all the time. And that, again, hard lesson to learn, one that I try to relearn on a daily basis, but I really believe that fervently, and I hope that people who work with me see the way I try to do management, for example, which is just not to be a micromanager and not to think I can always do it better than somebody else, and to have the wisdom to step back to let somebody else grow in their job, right? Of course I want guardrails, but I want to step back. Even if I think I can do it better myself, I know that the organization will be better if other people grow in their jobs. And we all live in a world where we do a lot of professional development. I think the most important professional development is supporting people who work for you to grow in their jobs, not to go and take a leadership training course somewhere else. And again, that's a hard thing for me, right? The temptation is, gee, I think I know it better, I can do it better. The aha for me was that that's not improving collective performance. It's actually reducing collective performance if I say, I can do that better.
So let me just retract, because you said don't send them to a leadership training program, and you're going to put me out of business right now, because that's what I have is leadership training programs.
Don't only do leadership training programs, right? I mean,
Yes,
this is just a sort of critical point about managers who say, of course I invest in my people, I give you a continuing education budget. Yes, of course you should do that. But there are other things we can do as managers and leaders to help people grow in their current jobs. You don't have, this is a supplement. Everyone should be doing the other thing to help individuals grow in their, in their daily work lives.
Absolutely. Thank you for that clarification. Next question. When we had an email exchanged and you shared that the topics you were going to talk about, I took the quotes that you wrote because I thought they were very meaningful. You said, but what it takes to lead is changing because young people are seeking meaning and purpose, not just a job to pay the bills. The traits of leaders now must be very different: authenticity, empathy, transparency, self-awareness, self-reflection. Based on that, how can a leader gain a deeper understanding of the emotional needs and aspirations of the young people that they lead? And how can they enhance their ability to lead with empathy and form a stronger connection with them?
So the positive side of that agenda, I think, is a very difficult one. But let me start with, it's either negative or the non-negative, which is that, I have this temptation myself. I think lots of people who are older have this temptation all the time, which is to look on young people today as if they're a bit spoiled. It's not that they want more. We think they want less, right? They want to work less hard. They don't want to be told what to do. All of the kind of stylized criticisms of Gen Z. And I think we've got to go the other way. We've got to own it as a positive that young people are looking for meaning and purpose in their lives, and they want that. They don't want that in their life and then their job to be different, right? They've got to have meaning and purpose in their work life too, because after all, it's a third of their life or whatever it is. So I think the temptation we've all got to resist. And of course, this is more extreme post-COVID, is to say, gee, these people who want work-life balance, all we need is a good dose of unemployment, and we'll get back to the good old days, right, where we can put people to work much harder. I think we've got to go the other way and say it's great that people want to have meaning and purpose in their work, and then for us to ask the question, how do we make that possible? And critically, and I was just part of a conversation on that, how do we make individual flourishing not only consistent with organizational performance, but improve organizational performance, right? To not just to say, yeah, we understand you want work-life balance, let's manage a way around that. Let's embrace that as a way to improve the performance of the organization. I think that's the big challenge.
Absolutely. I would love to learn how you as a leader capture hearts and minds while inspiring others to dream and achieve more.
So again, it's very hard for me as a self-deprecating Australian to talk up my own attributes, so I'll try not to do that. But I will tell you that I have a couple of simple philosophies about making change happen. So the first one is that, certainly true in universities, but I think it's true in most organizations, the way you make change happen isn't by command and control and telling people what to do. It's by winning the Hearts and Minds campaign and getting people to want to change. So that's a big difference. Second thing for me there is, again, look, I'm a business school dean. I get asked these questions about leadership style all the time, and I always kind of grimace when I get asked the questions. But if I was to describe my own style, I think I'd call it some combination of aspire and inspire. I want to formulate aspirations which are not only meaningful to me, but meaningful to other people. And then I want to try to inspire people to try to realize those aspirations, aspire plus inspire. Now, how do you do the inspire part? It can't be just by, thinking I know all the answers, right? The way I try to do this, and this will be the last thing I'll say about leadership style, I have a kind of what I call a concentric circles view of change. Let's say that, I've got some wacky idea and who knows whether it's ever going to see the light of day. what I try to do is to talk with a small group of people, probably the people closest to me, maybe my direct reports, about, hey, how does this sound? And in the event that, so you do that in a small group and maybe it gets killed and you never talk about it again. Maybe people are enthusiastic, or maybe they're in the middle and say, gee, I can see something to that, but have you thought about this? So that's the first small group. Then I take it to a bigger group and do exactly the same thing, and then to a bigger group. And, the university's faculty live in a world in which they love the idea of a faculty vote on something, right? If it's important, there's got to be a faculty vote. And for me, success is never to have a vote on anything, because by the time you get to a decision point, there's enough buy-in that people say, of course we're going to do that. We don't need to call the vote.
Thank you for that. In your opinion, what internal beliefs or habits might be holding leaders back from fully embracing this new model of leadership, and how can they overcome this to lead more authentically and effectively?
So I think the biggest challenge, I won't talk about universities, I'll talk about publicly traded companies. The biggest challenge is that if you're the CEO of a publicly traded company, you're accountable to the shareholders, and you tell them that you're giving people extra time off because you believe in their work-life balance, you're potentially going to get whacked by the investors, right? That's a reality. I think the challenge for, again, I'll just keep it in this narrow segment, the challenge for CEOs of publicly traded companies is to say that sustainable performance requires investing in your people in a way that will sustain them. What I say to students all the time is the biggest risk they run is burnout risk. And the way I define burnout is you burn out when you're doing things not because you want to do them, but because you're told to do them or you think you must do them. So I think leaders need to understand that, and if they're in it for the long run, being more compassionate, having higher empathy will actually be consistent with higher financial returns. But if you didn't grow up in a world like that, that's a pretty hard mindset to embrace. I think it's an incredibly important one, but I understand that it's also very hard to get there.
Thank you for that. I would love to ask you more questions, but I got the cue card that it's time to take it to the audience. So Daniel,